How does democracy end? With political correctness. This is one of a few pieces that I'm doing on the end of Western democracy. This particular one is on how the left is contributing to it, but the right has equal responsibility. Political correctness, I believe, is really the end of democracy. It seems like a great idea. Be nice to everybody. Don't offend anybody. But when you really get into it, you realize that political correctness is a power grab. Political correctness empowers manipulation by sociopaths. Democracy fundamentally is free speech. It is all about getting the best ideas. And the way we get to the best ideas is oftentimes by bad ideas being brought up and being crushed by good ideas. In a democracy, feeling offended is completely meaningless. Where is real success going to come from post-2020? Who will own the high ground in the entrepreneurial world, the startup world, the corporate world? It's going to be the one person in the room who truly understands the roots of human nature. And that's what my Human Nature Simplified YouTube channel and blog are all about. Layering in an improved emotional IQ on top of your already high fluid and crystallized IQ. What makes us so different from them, the West from the rest? What distinguishes the democratic Western world from the majority of the world that's controlled by juntas, oligopolies, dictatorships, cult leaders, and monarchs? Three things. Number one is free speech, supported by a truly free press. Number two is justice, the presumption of innocence. Three is a political system that is based upon majority rule. Since the Greeks invented it, what has defined democracy? It has meant one system for every necessary public policy. 6 steps. 1. Various ideas for policies, rules, and regulations get proposed for governing the populace. 2. The ideas come from every political stripe, conservative, progressive, libertarian, and in between. Number 3. The proposals, with their pros and cons, are debated by a freely elected assembly of representatives. 4. The ideas are assessed and freely and fairly voted upon by those representatives of the people. The winning ideas are put into practice with the accompanying rules, regulations, policing, and judicial systems to ensure that the majority follows the policies. 6. This status quo continues until such time as the people vote out the elected officials who chose to put those policies in place in order to try a different approach. The very instant that any ideas that should be debated by all the people's representatives no longer can be discussed, nor even proposed, because someone claims that a particular idea is offensive to their religion or culture, an explosion of protests should erupt. Why? Because democracies are 100% secular and 100% responsive to every notion that is raised, whether for or against any particular proposal. If a representative of the people doesn't like the proposal, he or she can vote against it, whether they are offended by it or not. Taking offense is an emotional reaction that is entirely intangible and totally irrelevant, since it cannot be defined outside of what you are saying is that you have a different idea in your mind than I have in my mind, and that seems to suggest that I'm wrong and you're right, and that hurts my feelings. What is fundamental to any democracy is that there is no place for debates over what was written down in an ancient text by power, money-hungry individuals or cadres of such individuals back in now irrelevant ancient times, when the impact of their baloney over the illiterate and uneducated masses was virtually omnipotent. Once a democracy is in place, all religious influence is totally irrelevant, since each new proposal is based upon the evaluation of its merits for the population in real terms, not in magical terms, based upon what might transpire with souls after death. The intangible emotional reaction called offense has no place in the democratic realm of policy debate. It is of no interest and is the exact opposite of democracy. It is dictatorship of the many by the few. And Western democracy was specifically set up to protect the rights of the few to do what they like in privacy without influence from the dictatorship of the many. Democracy allows minorities, no matter how odd or counterproductive their magical thinking is, to wear whatever bizarre or peculiar trapping of their beliefs in public, as long as doing so does not infringe upon the needs or rights or tax burdens of everyone else. They can chant or pray and sing and have fits as much as they want, or practice weird sexual acts or commune with the dead, but they cannot risk the well-being of the rest of us. by wearing a dagger on one's belt, or a turban instead of a motorcycle helmet, or walking on stilts in a grocery store, or mutilating their kids, etc. The moment that we allow a power-hungry individual or group to claim that merely discussing the merits of a new approach to a public policy is off limits due to it being politically incorrect as judged by them, democracy is dead. Similarly, keeping in mind that we now know that the frontal lobes, the part of the brain responsible for the assessment of the long-term impact of decision-making, only finish development at age 25 in human females and age 30 in males, the split second that we have to give in to the notion that what is right and proper for individuals who are not yet mature enough to understand the lifelong implications of their own actions, to be physically mutilated by the adults in their families or groups, or decide, for that matter, to self-mutilate themselves with tattoos, democracy, which deems the rights of the individual are sacrosanct, has been capitulated. And of course, we're talking both about adults' rights being sacrosanct, but also the rights of kids who are not yet old enough to decide what's right for them. We have to let them reach maturity before they can make decisions for themselves. In a democracy, the biological capability of procreation does not grant ownership of one's children, but merely stewardship. Sociopathic parents will disagree, but then sociopaths are now and always have been human civilization's greatest threat. And you can see my 1 hour-long video on why we love psychopathic dictators so much by clicking on the link down below. In fact, for representative democracy to be truly representative, every single adult must vote. If this idea violates your sense of personal freedom, write in Santa Claus on your ballot. But if you want to enjoy the benefits that come with living in Western democracy, you need to contribute. And it is only when the entire populace is mandated to vote that the biases that are inherent to our oddly and disparately wired human brains get cancelled out, and the true will of the entire populace is revealed, as is the case in Australia and Switzerland. It is those in the center who best reflect the needs of the majority. And for those who are merely listening to this, I've included my favorite Venn diagram, which demonstrates humanity's voting spectrum. 40% in the middle, who are the centrists, are bracketed by 30% of the people who cannot fight their brain wiring and will always vote conservative, no matter how the facts stack up against them, and 30% on the left, who will invariably vote for progressive ideas, again, no matter how the facts stack up against that being the wrong idea. Manipulation of the not-so-smarters on the left or the right simply is far too easy for any populist wannabe dictator to pull off, as Donald Trump clearly demonstrated. All that's required to get them on board is to play back to them whatever makes their brains most pleased. If you do so, they will not only vote for you, they will literally offer up their own lives and those of their children to march off to war at the command of the control freak sitting on his self-proclaimed throne, which is just another of humanity's bizarre suicidal tendencies. Ironically, what political correctness has done to our society is empower those who hide behind it to increase their status, while emboldening those who have felt that their deeply held prejudices have been unfairly suppressed for decades. See Trump lovers. Political correctness has divided the West, and especially that experimental laboratory called the American Democratic Experiment, into those who insist that forcing all of us to be politically correct is far more important than what makes democracy function fundamentally, which is free speech. And those who prefer for democracy, along with its differently wired constituents, to keep going. Make no mistake, there is no true democracy without unrestricted free speech, no matter how offensive it might be to some. Free speech is the crushing of really bad ideas by much better ones, by the smart, educated members of our civilizations over the ignorant, not-so-smarters, and those who would manipulate those who love populism in order to gain power. You can click below for my next video called Zero Tolerance is the End of Western Justice. As a serial entrepreneur, a corporate executive, a coach, and a mentor to many successful business people, I've oftentimes been asked, where does success really come from? Real success comes from understanding the origins of human nature. Emotional IQ is more than empathy. It's knowing why we do the oftentimes counterproductive things that we do. Drive, determination, perseverance, luck, and high fluid IQ will only get you so far. Emotional IQ is key to general IQ and to lifelong success. You can learn more at my blog, humannaturesimplified.blogspot.com, or my YouTube channel, Human Nature Simplified.